Disclaimer, I am not claiming as a whole Yu-Gi-Oh! Is some superior card game. There are plenty of other card games that do things much better than Yu-Gi-Oh! But I don't want my content to solely be bashing a card game I genuinely love to play. I think there are a ton of great ideas Yu-Gi-Oh! Has implemented over the years to keep both modern players happy and keep fans of longtime favorites satisfied with the game. Tournaments have been stronger than ever across the world, so don't be surprised to hear Konami is doing some things right. So for anyone who is getting into the game, or just in a more casual space, here are some of the highlights you can expect in Yu-Gi-Oh! Probably the biggest appeal to Yu-Gi-Oh! Are the archetypes. It's the only game where you can put a world of dessert, cutesy animal characters versus the literal demons of Dante's Inferno from hell. Name a visual theme and Yu-Gi-Oh! Has something for you. Of course they have the easy ones like mechs and dragons, but they also like to fuse ideas together. Punk monsters are a bright neon version of traditional Japanese theater. Cosmo is a cross between Wizard of Oz and Star Wars. The branded cards are all named after theater, and it's why no one who plays the deck is a normal functioning person. Another cool addition is when archetypes overlap. They will have an overarching lore and story about them, and sometimes a card from one archetype will be recontextualized in an entirely new archetype. They go far beyond just visuals though. In archetypes like Flower Cardian, you play a completely different game inside of Yu-Gi-Oh! You draw a ton of cards and summon to the board, but the monster's effects read more like game pieces than your average combo deck. What game is it? Nobody knows. It's based on Hanafuda cards, but there isn't a single Yu-Gi-Oh! Player on Earth who plays another card game. One of my personal favorites is Nouvelle, where your chefs tribute your opponent's monsters and turn them into ingredients for your big hungry burger. How the burger archetype wasn't a TCG exclusive is something I will never understand. No matter what type of card art you like, Yu-Gi-Oh! Has something for you. They even have Magic the Gathering art. For me, it's made some other card games with one general style feel kind of lacking. While games like Pokemon try to switch it up a bit, they are limited by the creature's inherent style. Another great benefit for Yu-Gi-Oh! Is how amazing its simulators are. I know I made a critique video of it, but Master Duel is probably the best official sim for a card game. Magic the Gathering, Arena, and Hearthstone might do a better job at teaching you the game, but for those who already know, Master Duel is hard to beat. An insanely generous gem economy means since release, you can be a free-to-play player and consistently build any deck you want, meta or not. I challenge you to find another free-to-play card game that lets you build decks as consistently as Master Duel. Another really neat factor with Master Duel is its release cycle. Konami will release pieces of archetypes earlier and later than the TCG, creating a remixed or sometimes completely unique format compared to the TCG or OCG. Right now, specifically, this branded Snake Eyes Super Heavy Samurai format can go anywhere, and there's so much to explore about what is good and what can be tested with. My Maxi hate aside, Master Duel is a lot more open with trying to unhit certain cards, making it feel much more exciting and adventurous. And if you don't want to do any grinding at all, the unofficial simulators for Yu-Gi-Oh! Have been historically amazing. Download any client of your choosing and have access to all the cards, both TCG and OCG. You also have your own casual and ranked ladder to play against people. Meanwhile, something like Pokemon's client is dead, and before Arena, if you wanted to play online Magic the Gathering free to play, you had to use something that looked like this. There are more ways than ever to play the game at a competitive level for free, and I highly recommend it for people who think modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Has gotten too expensive to try some out. Oh, and if you are someone who just prefers to play paper, next video is about super affordable decks you can play in top major events with. Make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss when it drops. Speaking of the paper side, probably the best move by Konami in the long term is their insane reprint philosophy. While the game can get quite expensive, every card in existence eventually gets reprinted a dozen times. Meaning eventually, whatever card you want to use will become reasonably affordable. And the expense isn't even that bad compared to other games. Magic the Gathering can also get insanely expensive to play modern or standard. The difference usually being if you do spend that kind of money, in Yu-Gi-Oh! It's more concentrated in the staples, so building the core of a new deck is a lot cheaper. In Magic, if you want to build a deck of a different color, there isn't much overlap in the cards you play. Not to mention, Magic is treated far more as an investment than other card games, and I really don't like that. I like it when collector items exist in specific rarities or special prints, but when the competitive game itself has finance bros attached to it, that's a big no for me. It's especially bad if you want to play an old school format, Legacy can cost several $1,000s to play, and Vintage costs as much as a sports car. Back to Yu-Gi-Oh! Most retro formats, you're spending $150 on a deck at most. GOAT can be built for like $70, as most of the core cards have been printed 1,000 times. Even these days, staples are getting reprinted consistently to help Rogue and Tier 2 decks keep up with meta threats. Say whatever you want about Yu-Gi-Oh, but at least you don't have to spend 6 figures just to summon Chaos Sorcerer. To be clear, there are quite a few battle pack drafts and formats in Magic that are perfectly affordable and easy to get into, but in my opinion, all formats in a game should be available to the public realistically. And probably my favorite thing about Yu-Gi-Oh! By far is how it handles legacy support. Every year, Konami will print new cards for an old archetype to try and breathe some new life into it, and for the most part, they do an amazing job at that. Sometimes too good of a job. In recent memory, decks like Fire King and Unchained have been top tier meta, which initially released like a decade ago and were okay at best. If you've been playing Yu-Gi-Oh! For a long time, there's an extremely high chance one of the many archetypes you have played throughout your time will get some insane starter, a new powerful boss monster, or both. Especially if that archetype was ever seen or played in the anime. Flame Swordsman got an archetype recently and it's actually pretty decent. And most of the time, the legacy support doesn't trample over the deck's pre-existing playstyle. It just puts it into overdrive, allowing longtime players to relive some of their favorite decks of the past. Not to mention, sometimes it will print a new card and unlimit something that's been kind of recent from a deck like 6 years ago, and it will casually resurge into popularity because it catches people off guard with how strong it is now. The meta changing not just from new cards, but the resurgence of old ones is one of the most unique and, in my opinion, the coolest thing Yu-Gi-Oh! Has in terms of how its format develops. And I saved the most controversial point for last. Maxi! I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I have a Maxi response in the works that I just haven't finished because it seems a little more toxic than my regular content because of all the people insulting me for not liking Maxi. I'm not the nicest person back about it. It just doesn't seem right. But comment below if you want to see it anyway. I can't respond to like the 50 paragraph ones, but there were some gems in the comment section that I would not mind replying to. Okay, my actual final point. The game's speed. I understand it's rough for beginners. I understand it can be overwhelming and take a while to learn. But surely there is a reason this game is still quite popular and tournaments across the world still put up great numbers. Then again, people still play Overwatch 2, and that game's so bad it killed them. Anyway, the speed of the game is unlike anything I've ever played before. Instead of spending half the game gathering energy or mana, you just go in. It feels like a high noon shootout. In one moment, only one person is left standing at the end. Learning how to not just parrot the standard combo line, but adapt to multiple disruptions, baiting out opponents' interactions, and saving your hand trap for the perfect time is some of the most fun I've ever had in a game. I was worried that my channel would just be the go-to for hating Yu-Gi-Oh, but I just can't get enough of it sometimes. This is the card game for me. And I hope everyone watching found something interesting in what Yu-Gi-Oh has to offer. While I think the game does need to make some big changes, the core idea is just unbeatable, and I'm excited to see where Yu-Gi-Oh goes in 2024. Thank you all for watching. Please like and subscribe for more Yu-Gi-Oh content. See ya!